Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you're doing well out there. Today, I want to continue on our saga to learn why do dogs attack us and other dogs? Why does that happen? And then what are we going to do about it? In the last couple of days, we've learned a few things. We learned along the way that use of the hawk strategy, in which I immediately attack, is actually beneficial for the individual. It really is. And then we learned that those individuals that employ the hawk strategy in groups over resources, over competitiveness over resources, we learned that hawk strategy can be adjusted up or down a little bit just based upon that individual's fighting ability, their fighting experience, how much value do they place on a resource, and do they think that they own it. Then we learned a lot about territories. What do territories offer? Well, territories really just a big resource in and of itself that contains other resources. And we learned a lot about rich habitats versus poor habitats. We learned about vantage points. Hey, if I happen to be occupying a rich habitat and I want to ward off all intruders, well, first of all, I need to know they're here. And then number two, I also learned that if I have a lot of obstacles, I won't know they're here. I learned to pay attention to early warning signals, and I learned that numbers mean a whole lot. In other words, why go into this battle by myself when I can take some other my own pack members with me? So all that being said, we've learned a lot about nature. We learned a lot about evolution in regard to aggression. We've learned about psychological and behavioral aspects of it. Now today I want to cover the grounds on two physiological aspects that are really important. They really are. First of all is testosterone. That's a hormonal primer. And I'll talk to you about what a primer is in a second. But man, if you ever want to have an example of what a hormone can do to influence behavior, take a look at good old Mr. T here, Mr. Testosterone. Because I tell you what, it can definitely impact and influence the behavior of an individual, especially with regards to aggression. Okay, so this area has been studied quite a bit. One thing we also learned is that in studying it, that it seems to be, at least with wild canids, tightly correlated with territorial defense. In other words, it kind of goes up in levels based upon the conditions in which the individual finds himself, whether the social conditions change, there's been a big disruption in the hierarchy, or there are a lot of intruders on my territory. During the wintertime, testosterone levels that were measured in animals were down. They were down. Why? Because defense of a territory during the wintertime can probably be described as lethargic as best. Deep snow, a lot of energy it takes to defend territories, to get to those outer lying areas, to detect the trespassing of intruders, just requires so much more energy. Go outside yourself and start stomping through about 3 feet of snow, and you'll find out how quickly a mile that you can cover easily in the summertime is not so easy to cover during the wintertime. So testosterone levels go down. Why? Because we're finding that it's not a set level in the individual. It goes up and goes down, again, depending upon the condition in which the individual finds themselves. It fluctuates with social changes. It fluctuates with competition, those resources. So it's really, really important to know that, because we've often thought that is testosterone's function to make an individual more aggressive. Well, yes, it is. But this individual doesn't walk around with this set level of testosterone, making them full-time aggressive. It doesn't. That's way too costly on the animal's body. You don't want to walk around with a full level of testosterone all the time, because that's going to affect your bodies. From a metabolic order, it really consumes a lot of energy. So it doesn't befit an animal trying to survive in a land and under the law of limited resources. So what we did find is that in measuring the individual's testosterone, one of the biggest things that was noticed is that it tends to go up only after an aggressive response. Notice I use that word, after an aggressive response. So once your dog has gotten in a fight with another dog, or once your dog has already lunged at another dog on a walk, or tried to ward off and frighten off the UPS delivery person at your home, after that, the male dog's testosterone will go up. And again, we're talking about intact males. Intact males. This is not going to be much affected by dogs that have been neutered. We're talking about intact males. And there's a lot of those males out there. A lot of human males have a problem with neutering their male dogs. They think it'll take away from their abilities. They think that they won't grow as tall, and they won't have as many muscles, and they won't be as confident. Well, there is some support to that, but when you weigh things on a cost-benefit analysis, I'm going to tell you that based upon all the studies that have been done, it is better to go ahead and neuter your dog. Now, there's a time period in which I'd recommend doing that, but let me get to finishing this up here. So after the aggressive response, the testosterone in most intact dogs and wolves is going to go up right then and there, and along with the rest of the animal kingdom, any male that's out there. And now it's learned that what we believe it does is it allows the resident of that territory, the defender of that territory, to maintain higher levels of aggression if there's a condition. Again, remember the conditions change. If there's a persistent intruder. So now we need to really think about that. So there may not be a persistent intruder on a wolf's territory if it's a very large territory, and it doesn't count if it doesn't go detected. But think about your dog. How many deliveries are you getting now, especially right now under the conditions in which we find ourselves having to live? How many walks are you taking in which you're encountering probably more dogs on those walks than what you were previously? How many times do the conditions change for your dog that requires your dog, in its mind at least, to respond aggressively? And if it does, know this: the level of testosterone is going to go up. And it doesn't just go up and down like throwing off a light switch. It doesn't. It goes up, and then it slowly decays over days. So that means if you have an aggressive response on Monday, you could have an animal walking around with a higher level of testosterone on Tuesday and deep into even Wednesday. And testosterone will make you more aggressive. That is one of the reasons why it's there. Just not to be full-time, it's a primer. Just because you have a high level of testosterone doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be aggressive. It takes all the other pieces of the puzzle to come in. Is there something worth fighting over? And if there is, how much so? And what is my resource holding potential in comparison to that other individual guy over there who has a very high resource holding potential? Maybe we're both got the same level of testosterone. So just having a high level of testosterone doesn't mean that you're going to go around picking fights with everyone. But it does mean that you are primed and ready to go should all those other pieces of the puzzle fit in. And I'm here to tell you, if you're primed and ready to go, well, sometimes you don't need all the pieces of the puzzle. You just need a few of them. And sometimes they can just be wee little pieces or even pieces that are missing a little part of them. So again, testosterone has been implicated in aggressive responses, but it typically fluctuates with social changes, and it was there to allow the individual to defend their territory or to gain that valuable resource when they needed to and secure that mate and so on and so forth. So it does have a purpose. So that being said, I owned a veterinary hospital for many years, and what I do mostly full-time is I study animals and help evaluate and determine therapy programs for animals who suffer from psychiatric disorders. So having had a vet hospital and watching dogs be neutered one after another or spayed, I recommend that most dogs are not neutered until they're a little bit over a year of age, somewhere between a year and a half. You need to feel this out some per dog. We all grow differently. We mature differently. We're born either more confidently or we're not. Those animals who seem a little bit more submissive, a little bit more fearful, I would advise you wait a little bit longer because that extra little testosterone can make that weak animal, that shy animal, that fearful animal, a little bit more confident. And on top of that, I want the animal to be a little bit older to withstand the trauma, not the physical trauma so much, as the psychological trauma of being taken off by strangers inside of a hospital, held tightly, given a shot in the forearm here, sedated, anesthetized, then surgery, then you kind of come out of the, after being anesthetized. That can cause a lot of psychological trauma to a young dog that young dog may never overcome. But older animals, they're more equipped to deal with that. They really are, just like we are as humans. So for that reason, any of you guys out there, if you have an intact male, there's no reason past about, definitely my cutoff for sure is 18 months. Absolutely, positively, for sure. Go ahead and neuter your dog. First of all, they can't impregnate another animal. Done. So now we cut down on population. Number two, their chances of prostate cancer drop drastically. And number three, it will cut down on the number of aggressive responses, or at least will allow your animal to give a little bit more grace. Raise that threshold of what I'm going to respond to aggressively. Okay, now I want to get to another one real quickly here, and it's called the stress response. If I can get my page flipped over here. There we go. All right, the good old stress response. I've done videos on this. I'll do many more, but basically this is kind of been tied to fight or flight. And of course, that's exactly what's happening when you employ the hawk strategy, or if you employ the dove strategy and you get the heck out of town. But something that you kind of need to understand too, especially if you own multiple dogs, or if you're just a real dominant type personality, because that plays into this whole thing. Know this, there's neurotransmitters. That's a chemical, neurotransmitter, serotonin. It's one of many neurotransmitters that you have, serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, you name it. There's tons of neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, and so on and so forth. But in the stress response in what we call dominant animals, we know that even resting in non-stressful situations, that they have and carry with them a higher plasma saturation level of a hormone, a steroid hormone known as corticosteroids. Now, these are they're part of the stress response. They're secreted by the adrenal cortex there, and they help you deal with danger, or they help you catch another animal, kill it, and eat it. They're vital. The problem with that is that if they're maintained at a high level, then they can cause harm in many ways. I've always said stress won't kill you. It'll just set you up to be killed by everything else. So we've learned that there's a price to be paid with being a leader. They've even taken blood tests on Fortune 500 CEOs, dictators, presidents, people who have high demand jobs, and they're ranked really high at the top of that totem pole. Well, there's a lot of stress with that. Everyone wants your job. Why be in the basement when you can have the top corner office? And there's a lot of responsibility for that top animal. So same thing goes for dogs, same thing goes for wolves, same thing goes for you. The more leadership and more responsibility you have, the more stress you're going to incur as a result of that position, which then means your body will respond to that stress and it will continue to release cortisol. Another neurotransmitter known as serotonin, been associated with moods. It's kind of like the happy juice in life. It can calm you down. If you have a shortage of it, you won't be so calm. Well, the leaders, we've done blood tests with them. They have a very low serotonin levels, very low, which that by itself, the combination of these two, stressed out, agitated, I don't have very much serotonin, so therefore my mood is an ugly mood. It's a dark mood, which means I'm now more of a primer for aggression. And with animals that were determined to be more submissive, the direct opposite. They have a low level of glucocorticoids and also corticosteroids, a low level of them. Not as stressful. Yeah, it can be stressful when you get thumped by this thing right here. It is very stressful. But generally speaking, not a lot of pressure on me, especially if you're a dog. You can be the lowest ranking dog in your whole household and you still get to eat. But out in the wild, definitely a little bit more stressful for them because rank does have its privileges. I get a mate, I get the food. If there's only a little bit of food, I definitely get the food. You could go without the food. But their serotonin level's higher. And what that does is it serves to hold aggression in check. It helps the animal be more submissive, calmer, not agitated, not trying to provoke this thing. So this really comes into play in two ways because they're both primers. What do I do? What do I act? What strategy do I employ? Hawk or dove? More dove, more hawk. And the more I employ hawk, winners tend to keep winning. Losers tend to keep losing. They give up quickly. So in a household with more than one dog, you could definitely have this going on here, and you could have these chemical imbalances, if you want to call them that could serve as a primer for your dog's aggression. So you might want to just take a real good look at the relationship that your dogs share in your household. If you have more than one dog who's dominant, meaning they're always being aggressive. They're fighting over food. They're fighting on, I want to go out the door first. I've got this particular spot on the sofa. If you and I meet at the door at the same time when we have an intruder approaching our house with a delivery package, I'm going to attack you. If you have that dog, then that dog, I guarantee you from a chemical standpoint, from both a neurotransmitter and from a steroid hormone, looks just like that. And then all the other dogs in your household that are not like that look like this. So again, nature even compensated. She wants her evolutionary stable strategy. She fights for it all the time. She fights for balance all the time. You want living examples? Just take a look at the air quality right now. Ever since we've not had so many planes in the air, wow. Nature is now back at levels that we saw in the 70s. Man, she can heal herself quickly. She's always trying to maintain equilibrium. So she's adjusting things in your dog's brain. But that being said, that could set your dog up as a primer to either attack or not attack. And so now let's say you only have one dog. I don't have this dog here, for example. I own this. Well, if you are giving in to your dog all the time, then your dog will have this, which means it's going to be less tolerant of you, more stressed out, more agitated, more willing to fight you, more willing to employ that hawk strategy against you because you're that. And you could even have that. You honestly could. You're probably going to be a little bit more stressed because you're a human. You're thinking, what the heck, my dog? I love my dog. And I feed my dog. Why is my dog trying to bite me? So yeah, this will probably flip up just a little bit right here. Because if these two were to get into a fight, if a fight occurred between these two, both of these, not only would this go up in both animals for sure during that moment, but also with dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with your motivation. That's your get up and go juice right there, baby. So they're both going to get up and go juice. I'm trying to get the heck out of here and get away from you, and you're over here trying to thump me pretty darn good. So those will flip for a little bit, and they'll stay like that for maybe a day or so afterwards, but then they're going to revert back to this here. And now let me flip it one more time. So your dog's like this, naturally. It just happens like that from a chemical standpoint because of a genetic baseline. This is where your animal is. If you're this real dominant owner all the time, pushing your animal, stressing your animal, asking your animal to do unreasonable things because it doesn't know, it can't interpret the signal, you become that. And that can create a condition in which your animal thinks it always loses all the time, which can create a very fearful animal. And I haven't even covered yet, and won't do it today, so save yourself here, so we're not going to go much longer, about self-defense aggression. So again, as we start showing you what to do here, Joshua and I, over the next couple of days, I'm going to really kind of point this thing out here. I am going to point out, I'm going to talk briefly tomorrow about self-defense aggression, about pack leaders out in the wild, how they lean on them, how this particular animal happens to be the gatekeeper of the territory. The gatekeeper holds the entire pack together, defends the entire pack. We'll talk about divisions of labor. And then after that, we're going to get busy with our dogs, because now we have covered the entire spectrum from the beginning of evolution all the way through physiological, chemical reasons why your dog can be aggressive, all the way to now psychiatric disorders that could cause aggression. And once you're armed with that knowledge, then everything that Joshua and I say and do afterwards, when we show you in multiple videos what to do and how to do it, hopefully it'll make sense to you. That's why I'm doing it. And I hope that's why you're suffering through these darn chalk talks, because they're absolutely necessary. To do it without it is wrong. So hang in there. I hope you're getting something good from it. And if you are, please make sure you do share it. There's a lot of sharing going on. We found that out yesterday. Thank you, people. Thank you, because I get to hear back. You don't, I do. They let me know, wow, this changed my life. I didn't know this. I'm adjusting things around my household right now. And my gosh, that is exactly what I want to hear. That's why I do it. That's why we do it. To help you in your relationship with your dog. So please share. You have no clue how that may affect someone who then shares it with someone else. So please do it. And also, if you have any questions, I know I go through this pretty quickly, so I'm not creating 1-hour videos. Mine are already long enough. Reach out to me. Ask me. If I don't get to you immediately, I will get back to you in a timely manner. We're just trying to get more stuff ready for you guys, and so it takes a lot of effort to get that thing done. But I appreciate you hanging in there. All right, so stay tuned. We've got a little bit more ground to cover on this reactive dog, aggressive dog video series. We'll be getting after here real shortly. Hang in there. And tomorrow we'll cover a few more things on the board, but then we'll be ready. I promise you. That's my last one is tomorrow. Is a little bit of talk. And even tomorrow we'll show you a few things with the dog. All right, until then, guys, be safe. Be safe.